When talking about the legacy of Star Trek, I think one aspect that often gets overlooked in that regard is the way that the fans of the original series shaped modern fandom as we know it today. Star Trek started, or at least popularized, many fan traditions, like conventions, merchandise collecting, cosplay, sharing fan art and fan fiction. A lot of science fiction tropes were made popular by Trek episodes, like the Dark Timeline or Sex Pollen. But the most interesting fandom trend that began with Trek is shipping culture. So, it's time at last to talk about the granddaddy of ships, especially gay ones, Kirk/Spock. I know I've been really subtle about it, but there is a very prevalent and valid interpretation of the friendship between Jim and Spock that the captain and his first officer are way more than friends. What? More than friends. For those of you who have been living under a rock for the last 30 years without internet access, welcome back. I'm surprised this is the first video you clicked on. Shipping describes when fans of a piece of media want two characters to get together in a romantic relationship, or expect that that's where the creators of the media will take the characters' relationship in the future. Like in the early days of the Harry Potter fandom, fans debated about whether Hermione would end up with Harry or Ron. Hermione ultimately ended up with Ron, but there are still people who prefer Harry/Hermione, or even Hermione/Draco. The natural result of a fan base for a piece of media in which the number of male characters to female characters is highly uneven is to ship more male-male pairings than male-female or female-female pairings. That's why most fan fiction as a whole centers around male-male relationships, since most popular media focuses on the narratives of strong male protagonists, with their female supports often underdeveloped and shown less on screen. That's why more people ship Steve Rogers with Bucky Barnes than Peggy Carter. So, say you have a show that has 7 main characters, 6 of whom are male, and really only 2.5 of them are well developed and interact on screen together often. People are going to start shipping those characters. And in the late 1960s and early 70s, Star Trek fans began to wonder, are Jim and Spock doing 2-person push-ups? Playing hide the zucchini? Packing fudge together? That one might be a little distasteful. Now, it's not just that Jim and Spock are 2 adult men within the vicinity of each other. Of all the main characters on the Enterprise, Jim and Spock have the closest bond, closer to each other than any other woman in their lives. Why do you have to make everything gay? Why can't 2 men just be friends? Because I hate you. Look, I'm the last person to suggest that Gene Roddenberry was conspiring to slip an epic gay romance under the radar on his campy science fiction social justice parable show, even though some fans probably do believe that was the goal. I think the writing and the performances between Shatner and Nimoy just accidentally happened to come off as romantic. This is not the one true way to read into Star Trek by any means. I present this to you as an interpretation, nothing more. That being said, if you're writing to the comments to tell me Kirk and Spock are not gay, Kirk likes women, you stupid fangirls think everyone is gay, I don't know what to tell you. This video isn't for you. If you're that close-minded that you can't even let other people interpret the text the way they want to, don't you have better things to do? I'll see you for the Apollo episode. Get out of here. Are they gone? Okay. For now, I'm going to focus on the first season and Amok Time since I don't want to spoil the rest of the series or the movies. I will say though, if you thought Jim and Spock were gay in the show, the movies take it to a whole new level. In the 1960s, there was a distinctive lack of LGBTQ personalities on TV. It wasn't until the 1970s that gay folks started getting screen time on shows like Mary Hartman, and All in the Family. Shout out to Norman Lear for being the straight ally.
Well, this was more like a marriage.
A marriage? Oh, but it couldn't be. I mean, you and Cousin Liz was both gay.
For more on the history of gay people on TV, check out Matt Baum's channel. His videos are very fun and informative. And for more on the history of the Hays Code and gays on screen, check out the Gay Love and Monsters video on this channel. Gene Roddenberry, for all his problematic points, seemed to be fairly open-minded about gay people. After all, he cast George Takei in the role of Sulu, who wasn't officially out until 2005, but according to Takei, Roddenberry supported the idea of having LGBTQ characters in Star Trek. In theory, Roddenberry was open-minded. He wasn't stupid. He knew that Star Trek would be cancelled in a picosecond if he tried to add queer representation.
I said, we've dealt with almost every social issue, every civil rights, human rights issue, and the gay issue is another important one. And have you ever considered addressing that? And he said, you're right. I'd like to do that. But he said, I'm walking a tightrope. And so I've got to keep the show on to tell the stories that I'm telling, which aren't being dramatized metaphorically on any of the other show. I've got to keep the show on. And that, as you say, may be a bridge too far.
The issue of queer representation in Star Trek was brought up again when The Next Generation was commissioned by Paramount, which by then owned the rights to the franchise. And Roddenberry said, you know what? It's the 80s. It's time to have gays in Starfleet. I'm gonna do it. And then he died. Roddenberry's death meant that the other showrunners didn't have to adhere so strictly to Gene's vision, which had some creative benefits, but also it meant that Gene's aim to include gay rep was canned. I wonder who we have to blame for that. Meanwhile, in fan world, Star Trek fan communities were coming together to share their love for the show. After Trek was cancelled in 1969, the first major Trekkie convention, Star Trek Lives! Was held in 1973 in New York. Since the term relationshipping wouldn't become a thing until the 90s, with the advent of online fan forums and the Buffy and X-Files fandom, fans had to use code words, especially if you were talking about a gay ship. Obviously, the public at large didn't have the highest opinions of a gay relationship, so the idea of shipping two men was pretty taboo. Shipping Kirk and Spock became known as the premise, and the way you found your fellow shippers was by asking, do you support the premise? If the answer was yes, then you knew you'd found a fellow Kirk/Spock shipper. In fact, the term slash, a term which connotates the shipping of two men, which isn't so popular anymore since same-sex shipping is a lot less stigmatized in fan spaces, came from Kirk/Spock. More modern fans like to call the pairing Spirk, as it uses less letters and syllables. Insert joke here about how the ship should be called Cock. The earliest Spirk fanfictions were published in fanzines, which is exactly what it sounds like. Fan-made magazines shared among fans that contained fan-written articles, short stories, fanfiction, and other original fan art. Since they didn't have Archive of Our Own or LiveJournal to share their works online, fanzines were really the only way to make sure your work was circulated amongst your fellow fans. Otherwise, it would just sit in a drawer. When it came to Spirk, shippers often had to do their own thing in private, since again, shipping slash in the fandom at large was still taboo. There were specifically Kirk-centric fanzines like Naked Times, Matter/Antimatter, Scattered Stars, just so many fanzines. And since these were largely self-made zines mimeographed from home or published by extremely small independent presses, you basically had to know someone to get included on the mailing list for these zines, or meet up at a convention. Luckily, a lot of fans held on to old copies and have archived these pieces of fandom history on the internet for posterity. Otherwise, a lot of art and fan fiction would be lost in time. Like jizz in rain. I think that's the quote, right? I've seen Blade Walker, totally. Now, it should come as no surprise that the majority of Spirk shippers were not hetero dudes, or even gay dudes. It was housewives. Yeah, remember when I said Lucille Ball was the first Trekkie? She was only the first in an army of Trek fangirls. When it first aired, Star Trek was primarily loved by women, even though we tend to think of the archetypal nerd as a cis, straight, white male. Then again, when you consider that the novel considered to be the first science fiction story ever was written by a woman, maybe this isn't so weird after all. So thanks to all those amazing ladies, our mothers, grandmothers, great-grandmothers, being a fan today would probably be a totally different experience, thanks to their building the fandom framework those 50-odd years ago. AO3, Tumblr, and yes, even Wattpad probably wouldn't exist without them. So why have literally generations of fans latched on to Spirk? Because Kirk/Spock is still the #1 ship in the entire Star Trek fandom, across 10, soon to be 11 TV shows and 13 movies. Surely there must be some reason why so many people ship this. I'm so glad you asked.
I'm not gay, guys, that ain't me. I'm just comfortable with my sexuality.
So let's address the elephant in the room. Ren, You stupid, sexy, hot, brilliant slut bag. Kirk is straight. He's into women's. He no like PP. Well, gee, you got me there. I guess the video's over. Thanks for watching, guys. Hit that like button, subscribe, check out my Patreon. Wait, where's that music coming from? So Jimothy's straight, huh? How do you explain this?
It seems they're bisexual.
I've been worried about you ever since that night on Denim 4.
Is that a uniform of some kind? This little thing? Something I slipped on.
They were, of course, made to my personal specifications.
Don't you believe in male androids, Harry? Are there men on this planet?
The most hetero. Okay, yeah, I played some of those clips out of context. However, even if that body of evidence didn't exist, there's still Kirk's relationship with Spock. The thing about sexuality is, it's not a dichotomy, more of a spectrum. There's many fans who observe Kirk's canonical attraction to women, while also recognizing that he can also like men. Because bisexuality exists. Pansexuality exists. The man f***s aliens! You gonna sit there and tell me that a person who f***s aliens gives a shit about what genitals are attached to the person they're f***ing?
Relax, he's a 51st century guy. He's just a bit more flexible when it comes to dancing.
How flexible?
So many species, so little time.
Being openly bi, or pan, has become so much more common in recent decades. Not that there's been an increase of people turning queer, just that people feel more comfortable being out in modern times. And I predict that in the 23rd century, the majority of humanity will identify somewhere on the bisexual spectrum. Not everyone, but most. And Jim Kirk is no exception. He is a glorious pansexual in my mind, and nothing will ever change that. Now, it is worth noting that in the novelization of the motion picture, Kirk directly addresses the apparently in-universe rumors that he and Spock are lovers. See, even people in the Star Trek universe see it. And Kirk says,
"As for myself, although I have no moral or other objections to physical love in any of its earthly, alien, and mixed forms, I've always found my best gratification in that creature, woman. Also, I would dislike being thought of as so foolish that I would select a love partner who can only come into heat once every 7 years."
Which sounds like a declaration of heterosexuality. But if you think about it for longer than 2 seconds, he says that he's found his best gratification, implying that he's tried it with other genders. Just because he prefers women doesn't mean he's straight. Bisexuals can have a preference. And also in that same exact paragraph, he claims that the reason he's not with Spock is because he'd want to have sex with him more than once every 7 years. Are you hearing this? Like, no homo, bro, but I want Bryson to let me hit that all the time. It's not gay if you keep your socks on, bro. Okay, fine, you say. Kirk's a little not straight. But what about Spock? He's got a wife. Yeah, a wife that he didn't really want all that much.
When I thought I had killed the captain, I found I had lost all interest in T'Pring.
Spock doesn't want T'Pring because he's in love with her, or even because he finds her attractive. Literally the only reason he's drawn to her is because he was forcibly mentally bonded to her at the age of 7. He's following a basic instinct because he doesn't want to die. You ever eat a food you don't like because it's the only thing in the house and you're hungry but you can't afford DoorDash? Yeah, it's like that. But what about Leela? He was happy with her. Bruh. He was high on spores. If you have to drug someone to get them to like you, then honey...
He's just not that into you. So move on. Have a great day.
I am what I am, Layla.
You are gay!
If we have to define Vulcan sexuality in human terms, then I would, personally, headcanon Spock as gay. It's just a vibe. When you look at all the times Spock shows interest in a woman, it's easily explained away in the text.
And a pretty face doesn't affect you at all, does it? That is, not unless you want it to.
No, girls don't affect him. before you say, oh, but he was with Uhura in the AOS movies, different universe, different sexuality, I guess. I don't know. Not to mention, a lot of Spock's backstory comes off as a queer allegory. Spock has a strained relationship with his parents, Spock never met his father's expectations, Spock got bullied a lot as a child, Spock cut off contact with his relatives and gained a found family. You know who can relate with that experience? A lot of queer people. Spock's shame over his own emotions can be read as a metaphor for internalized homophobia, because a lot of queer people grew up in a hostile environment that didn't accept them, and then they turn around and absorb that negativity.
I respected my father, our customs. I was ashamed of my earth. Jim, when I feel friendship for you, I'm ashamed.
He feels shame for having feelings for another man. But it's more than just allegory when it comes to Kirk and Spock's relationship. In the words of one very British librarian, the subtext is rapidly becoming text. Now, if I ran through every single moment where Jim and Spock's gazes lingered just a little too long on each other, this video would be 8 hours long. But let's look at some highlights from Season 1. Season 1, Episode 1, The Man Trap. Spock runs headfirst into danger to save Jim when he thinks he's in trouble. Now obviously one could write this off as Spock being a good friend or a second in command. But here's the thing. Spock is supposed to be this super composed, unemotional Vulcan. But when Jim's in trouble, Spock panics. Clearly he cares about Jim, more than he's supposed to. Again, this could all just be evidence of close friendship. But let's look further. Episode 2, Charlie X. There's 2 moments that display Kirk and Spock's closeness. When Jim becomes enraged when Charlie breaks Spock's legs. As I've said, Jim looks out for his crew, but he is overprotective of Spock to a fault. Especially since Spock is 3 times as strong as the average human, and if anything, Spock should be looking out for him. The other moment is when Kirk and Spock are playing chess. It's a little flirtatious.
Your illogical approach to chess does have its advantages on occasion, Captain.
I prefer to call it inspired.
As you wish.
There's a similar scene at the very beginning of the next episode where no man has gone before. Jim and Spock are again playing chess. Spock is moving very strategically, but is bested by Jim, who makes unexpected moves that catch Spock off guard. And again, it's a little flirtatious.
Certain you don't know what irritation is?
In fact, one of my ancestors married a human female.
Terrible, having bad blood like that.
Ever been teased by someone who has a crush on you? That's what this scene comes across as. It's also a great scene for setting up who Jim and Spock are and displaying their contrasting personalities. Spock is all logic and suppression of emotions, and Jim, while understanding and accepting of Spock's alienness, also brings the human side out of him while never belittling either part of him. One thing that sets Jim apart from everyone else in Spock's life is that he doesn't try to put Spock in a box. His fellow Vulcans impose their strict emotional discipline on him and shame him for his humanity, and the humans around him are always trying to force him to open up and admit to emotion, while often at the same time mocking those same emotions and reinforcing Vulcan stereotypes.
Are you Vulcan or are you human?
I know how you feel. You hide it. But you do have feeling.
And I'm sick and tired of your logic.
Why, you wouldn't know what to do with a genuine, warm, decent feeling.
And Jim just sort of lets him be. Oh, sure, there's good-natured teasing every now and then, but Jim never asks Spock to be anything other than what he wants to be. Jim never makes him feel like his Vulcanness or his humanity makes him less than. For Spock to have someone in his life who just accepts him unconditionally is really important. Episode 5, The Enemy Within, when Spock walks in on Jim after he's been in the shower.
Yes, Mr. Spock, what is it?
Is there something I can do for you, Captain?
Like what? Come on, Spock, I know that look. What is it?
If you'll excuse the intrusion, Captain, I'll get back to my work.
But not before a cold shower. Come on, this scene did not have to have that much sexual tension. And then there was this bit from the end of the episode where Spock was oddly catty toward Rand.
The posture had some interesting qualities. Wouldn't you say?
Dude, she was sexually assaulted. What's wrong with you? Episode 7, What Are Little Girls Made Of? In the beginning, Chapel explains to Spock that a person can always recognize their lover. Later in that very same episode, an android duplicate of Kirk comes aboard, and Spock knows immediately that it isn't him. He can also tell something is wrong when Rock calls up to the ship imitating Kirk's voice. Episode 8, Miri. This exchange.
And I do want to go back to the ship, Captain.
Of course, Mr. Spock.
Seriously, again with the eyes and the soft voices and the Episode 9, Dagger of the Mind. In the beginning, Kirk is caught off guard by a woman he had a flirtatious encounter with, and he acts almost embarrassed and ashamed about it in front of Spock, like he's been caught cheating. Later on, Kirk is hypnotized into believing he's in love with said woman, but he snaps out of it almost immediately when Spock appears. But more tellingly, there's this bit, when the villain of the episode is brainwashing Kirk.
You're madly in love with Helen, Captain. You'd lie, cheat, steal for her, sacrifice your career, your reputation.
Unintentionally foreshadowing Amok Time, where Kirk actually does sacrifice his career and reputation for Spock.
I can't let Spock die, can I, Bones? Isn't that worth a career?
Episode 10, The Corbomite Maneuver. Kirk calls Spock his
Emotional security.
Episode 13, Conscience of the King. Remember how I said the whole episode is a retelling of Hamlet, with Kirk being Hamlet, Kodos being Claudius, etc.? Yeah, well in that episode, Spock serves the role of Ophelia, who is, Hamlet's girlfriend.
Did it ever occur to you that he simply might like the girl?
It occurred. I dismissed it.
You would?
They could have easily split the role of Horatio between him and Bones, but they made the decision to make Spock Ophelia. Plus, there's this edit that cracks me up every time I watch this episode. Kirk is with Lenore here, and it hard cuts to Spock nervously rubbing his hands, like he can sense that Kirk is up to heterosexual activity. I did not edit it this way. That's just the way the editor of the episode chose to do it. Kirk is getting cozy with some woman while Spock is over here having a Jolene moment.
I'm begging of you, please don't take my man.
Episode 15, Shore Leave. This episode was written by the same writer of Amok Time, science fiction author Theodore Sturgeon. Shore Leave is the one that starts with the random back massage scene.
Push hard. Take it in there, Mr. Spock.
Theodore Sturgeon famously wrote a short story called The World Well Lost in 1953, which is significant because it focuses on two aliens visiting Earth who are revealed to be in a same-sex relationship. So Sturgeon wasn't shy about depicting gay alien romance. Episode 20, Court Martial. Spock, who we know lives his life by logic and rationality, pushes all logic aside to swear to Kirk's innocence, despite all the evidence he's guilty. He compares Kirk's goodness to gravity itself.
I speak from pure logic. If I let go of a hammer on a planet that has a positive gravity, I need not see it fall to know that it has, in fact, fallen. It is impossible for Captain Kirk to act out of panic or malice. It is not his nature.
I guess sometimes facts do care about your feelings. Episode 24, This Side of Paradise, which just, the whole episode. Why is Kirk so mad about Spock having a girlfriend? What reason could he have for getting so upset? What could it be?
Spock. Mr. Spock?
I'm not saying the spores didn't work on Kirk because he was seething with jealousy, but... No, actually, that's exactly what I'm saying. And even later on, when Kirk is trying to rile Spock up.
Disloyal to the core, rotten like the rest of your subhuman race, and you've got the gall to make love to that girl.
I'm sorry, when did this become about Leela, Jim? And then in the final scene between Spock and Leela, Jim manages to come between them without even being in the room.
I have a responsibility to this ship, to that man on the bridge.
Episode 25, The Devil in the Dark. This whole episode is just Spock wanting to protect Jim from the big bad monster. He even makes up bullshit statistics on the spot just to get Jim to let him go with him. And when Spock thinks Jim is in peril, he again panics, going back on his devotion to preserve the Horta's life. Episode 26, Errand of Mercy, is Jim's turn to be the overprotective husband. Commander Kor threatens to torture Spock, and Kirk is ready to rip his throat out at the mere suggestion. The Klingon sentry pushes Spock, and Kirk has to physically be held back. And episode 28, Sitting on the Edge of Forever. For an episode that's supposed to be about Kirk's relationship with another woman, there sure is a lot of Spurk content here to mine. For example, when Jim admires Edith's brilliance, Spock seems a little annoyed.
Speculation. Gifted insight.
But it will come.
I find her most uncommon, Mr. Spock.
She's not that great. Later in the episode, when Spock watches Edith kiss him, he turns away looking devastated. Even Edith has to comment on their closeness.
Where would you estimate we belong, Miss Keeler?
You? At his side, as if you've always been there and always will.
So all of that is just an overview of Season 1 Spurk, which leads us into Amok Time. How did they get this on the air? This is so gay. So like I said, the writer of this episode was science fiction writer Theodore Sturgeon, who's also responsible for this.
Take it in there, Mr. Spock.
And you want to talk about intricate rituals, I'm surprised this fight didn't get pulled from NBC by the FCC. Let me remind you that Spock is stewing in his own libido in this scene. Not to mention those weapons, bondage, and giant phalluses. Freud would have an aneurysm watching this. I postulate that while biological impulse due to their mental link drew Spock to T'Pring, the person he really wanted was Jim. And how do I know this? After T'Pring denies him, what does Spock do? What is the very first thing he does? He starts walking toward Jim. Jim is Spock's next logical mate. T'Pring not wanting him isn't a problem, and if it weren't for Vulcan traditional values, he and Jim would have ridden off into the sunset together. Innuendo 100% intended. So, do you remember how Conscience of the King was a retelling of Hamlet? Well, I posit that Amok Time is a covert retelling of another Shakespeare play, Romeo and Juliet. In this case, the Montagues and the Capulets are Vulcan society and the Federation, because the Federation stands in the way of Jim helping Spock, and Vulcan culture stands in the way of Spock being with anyone but T'Pring. No, I don't think T'Pring is Paris. In the beginning of R+J, before he sees Juliet, Romeo is pining for a girl named Rosalind. But his love for Rosalind is silly, base infatuation, much in the same way that Spock's attraction for T'Pring isn't based in real love for her. So, Spock is Romeo, and Jim is Juliet, and that is made clear because of the way the fight scene happens. In order to escape marrying Paris, Juliet takes a sleeping drug from a friar to appear dead. And oh, how does Jim get out of the fight? By taking a drug from McCoy that makes him appear dead. Like Romeo, Spock is gutted at the thought that his true love is dead, because no one tells him that Kirk is really alive. Luckily in this version, Juliet, Jim, wakes up in time before Romeo can do anything stupid. It's not a precise retelling by any extent of the imagination, but the crucial plot points are there. The two parties keeping our lovers apart, the trusted friend who supplies the fake-out death potion, one lover thinking the other is dead so they're ready to end it all, metaphorically. The only real difference is the happy ending.
Come on, Spock, let's go mind the store.
Baby, lock the door and turn the lights down low.
By sheer coincidence, this episode was the first to employ the famous phrase, live long and prosper. In R+J, Act 5, Scene 3, Romeo tells Balthazar, live and be prosperous, and farewell, good fellow. I can't prove beyond the shadow of a doubt that Theodore Sturgeon was writing a covert gay adaptation of Romeo and Juliet, but the evidence strongly implies it. So let's talk about the resolution to the episode. Where does Spock's urge to mate suddenly go?
When I thought I had killed the captain, I found I had lost all interest in T'Pring. The madness was gone.
So Jim's death broke Spock's mental link.
What broke the connection? I don't know.
God damn it, you two, this is not your video! The surface level reading of this is that killing your opponent somehow substitutes the need to mate, but I don't really buy that. Spock made it clear that the only options were to mate or die. You'd think that he would have mentioned, Or I could kill someone, that would also fix me. Now granted, Spock definitely doesn't want to kill someone, and wouldn't willingly choose that option, but you'd think he'd at least mention it. In sickbay, when talking about the fight to Kirk and Bones, he acts like the outcome surprises him. So unless T'Pring was the first Vulcan to ever initiate Cali-Fi, which I doubt, Spock definitely should have known that his Pon farr could be cured by killing someone. Now, for those of you who've seen Voyager, yes, I know what you're thinking. Blood fever. In that episode, a Vulcan character fights someone, and that also cures them of their Pon farr. But here's the thing. Vorik and B'Elanna knock each other out. No one dies. While I do believe that rigorous physical activity could potentially satiate the mating urge, Spock isn't tired out when the fight with Kirk ends. So the whole killing someone also cures Pon farr thing doesn't really add up. Am I thinking too hard about this? Yeah. So ignoring the flimsy "he killed someone so he's fine now" excuse, there's only two ways to read this. Either Spock loves Jim so much that the grief over having killed him overrode his basic mating instinct, or Spock came in his pants while he was rolling around on the ground with him. There's no other explanation.
Keep it gay, keep it light, keep it fresh, keep it fair. Let it bloom every night. Give it room. Never stand still. Keep your love a lovely dream and never wake it. Come on, Mike. Keep it gay, keep it gay, keep it gay. Keep it gay, keep it gay, keep it gay.
Hey, if you made it to the end, congratulations. You must really love Spurk, or you must really love me, so for either one, thank you. I promise not every video will be like this. I will, do my regular Trek reviews, in the normal fashion, talking about, production and the philosophy behind the writing. It won't always be about gay stuff. I just, this is an important aspect of the show that I think we should talk about, because Spurk culture, whether you ship it or not, is a big part of the fandom, and it deserved a video. So thanks for watching, everyone. I will see you soon. It's really good to be back from my little hiatus. And stay safe, stay well, stay happy. Bye!